we visit the Earth today? No. Spaceship advisor says they've only got one star.
The Fool's Journey. Following his catastrophic meeting with the Tower, the Fool now finds himself stripped right down to his core self, and in the company of a lady who's stripped right down to her birthday suit. It's starting to feel like he's journeying through a lap dancing bar.
Hello, Fool. How are you feeling?
Lost? I don't know who I am anymore.
That's not such a bad thing.
Isn't it?
Can't you see? Now you are a blank canvas, finally free of the old you. All those silly habits and limiting beliefs gone in a flash of lightning.
But it was absolutely terrifying.
Of course it was terrifying. That's why most people will do anything they can to avoid it. You don't break free of negative patterns by sitting in an armchair. The whole business needs to come crashing down around your ears. You are a brand new person now, Fool, with a bright future ahead of you.
Yeah, I think you're right. I thought losing everything I know would be the end of me.
Oh no, this is only the beginning. You are approaching the end of your journey though.
Yes, it's time to get back out there. Everything feels so fresh, and no one's told me to go forth into the world for a while. Maybe things will be different now.
Exactly. Now go forth into the world with hope and aspiration. It's your time to shine, Fool.
The Fool sets out with hope in his heart across a starlit landscape, but as the moon rises, he can't quite shake the feeling that something is wrong. To be continued. Welcome back to Kippy's Quest. This week we're finally getting some relief from all the evil and chaos that's reigned over the channel for the past couple of weeks. Numbered at 17 in the Major Arcana, we find the Star. This is the card of hope, and I feel like the world could do with some hope right now. Turning a corner is a really good way of putting this card. The feeling you get after a rough patch when things finally start working out. It's a bit like the light at the end of the tunnel, or the promise of the phrase, "This too shall pass." The Star speaks of the wellspring of energy we carry inside ourselves. It's also a card of the mental healing that comes from calmness and tranquility. Now there's some similarity to the Temperance card back at number 14, in the sense that we can see an angel pouring fluid from two chalices, the difference being that the Star is pouring the water straight out into the world. Rachel Pollack says, where Temperance pours the water back and forth, blending but at the same time conserving, the Star Maiden pours it out freely, confident that life will continually supply her with new energy. Let's see what Arthur Edward Waite has to say about this shining beacon of hope and optimism. Loss, theft, privation, abandonment. What? I thought we'd just been through all that. Oh, hang on. He also says another reading says hope and bright prospects. Let's go with that reading. That's a better reading. I've said this so many times I sound like a broken record, but the divinations that Waite gives in the third section of the key are historical and can sometimes contradict what he writes in the earlier sections. This is a shining example of that, and the reason why I have to keep banging on about it all the time. Consistency seems to be a bit too much to ask of the 19th century mystics. Earlier variants of the card depict a similar image of a star with a maiden, but the Tarot de Marseille version is almost identical to the Waite Smith card, and can be credited with what has become the most popular image. Top and center we find the star of the show, big, yellow, and with 8 points. Waite calls it a great radiant star of 8 rays. There are many associations to this symbol. It is the star of Ishtar, the Babylonian goddess of fertility, and Christians have adopted it as the star of Jesus Christ himself. There are quite a few variations on the 8-pointed star, including the isotoxal. Aye?
That's quite cool, isn't it? Looks like a death metal version, although apparently this variation has a lower dihedral symmetry. So yeah, better bear that in mind. According to Waite, the star is L'Étoile Flamboyante, which appears in Masonic symbolism, but has been confused therein. Waite mentioning the Freemasons there, those mysterious purveyors of complicated handshakes. Now here is where I hit a problem. This is L'Étoile Flamboyante. Now I may be thicker than an elephant sandwich, but even I can see that particular star definitely comes up short on the points front. To the tune of 3 if we're being specific. Presumably this is the confusion that Waite mentions. Confusion being a bit of an ongoing feature when it comes to this particular project. That star looks more like a pentagram to me, but hey, what do I know? Waite goes on to say the star is surrounded by 7 lesser stars, also of 8 rays. If you've seen the Temperance episode, you'll know how important the number 7 is, so I'll spare you the huge list of things that there are 7 of. However, Paul Foster Case had this to say on the subject. The 7 smaller stars refer to the 7 interior stars, which are the same as the chakras mentioned by Hindu occultists. This would be the 7 circular focal points used in meditation from esoteric Hinduism.
Why are shooting stars so fast?
I don't know. Why are shooting stars so fast?
Because they're travelling light.
Oh dear. Beam me up, Scotty.
The figure on the card is yet another character from the major arcana who favours naturism over the concept of garments. There she is, free and easy, enjoying the fresh air. In her hand she holds what Waite describes as two great ewers, irrigating sea and land. Now I must confess I wasn't originally sure why anyone would feel the need to water the sea, but it does turn out to be a good thing in the end. Now we can see quite the departure in Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot. In the Book of Thoth, Crowley says, "These cups resemble breasts." They don't. As it is written, the milk of the stars from her paps. Paps.
So who's this Aleister Crowley when he's not banging on about paps? A brief history of Aleister Crowley.
Aleister Crowley was a British writer, poet and occultist who came from Leamington Spa, which is about 30 miles away from my house, down the M5 and off at Junction 14, over the Warwick Bypass, carry on through Bell End.
Is any of this relevant?
Sorry. Crowley was a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and later went on to form his own magical philosophy named Thelema, which is the Greek word for will. He produced many works on ritual magic, Western esotericism, yoga, and developed his own tarot deck called the Book of Thoth. Crowley had a rather unconventional approach to spirituality, which focused on the worship of the individual. The combination of ritual magic and a hedonistic lifestyle earned Crowley the nickname the wickedest man in the world from the British press, a title he rather enjoyed. However, beneath the sensational stories lie some lasting contributions to esotericism. Loved and loathed in equal measure, Aleister Crowley has an important place in the history of ritual magic. So before we got derailed by the beast, we were talking about jugs. We can see the figure is pouring water from two chalices. The one on the right is hitting the ground and running off into 5 streams. This seems to correspond to the 4 physical elements, with one stream running back into the water, while the 5th stream would represent spirit, just as it does on the pentagram. The pool that she's pouring the other jug into is thought to represent the collective unconscious. According to Paul Foster Case, the pool is the universal consciousness, or reservoir of the cosmic mind stuff. Now it's interesting to note that the figure's foot rests on the surface of the pool. This is said to symbolize the unconscious mind being aroused by the figure. Rachel Pollack says the maiden's foot does not penetrate the water. The collective unconscious has not been entered, but only stirred up. Water in the tarot is connected to emotions, and the jug which pours into the water could be taken as divine influence being poured directly into the soul. In the background we see a mountain, and just as it does in the earlier cards, this represents the great work that we talked about in the magician video. In front of that we've got a bird sitting on a tree. Now the bird is an ibis, which is the bird associated with Thoth, the Egyptian god of knowledge, and also who Crowley named his tarot deck after. Besides being often depicted with the head of an ibis, his Egyptian name is Jehuti, which means he who is like the ibis.
But what does it all mean?
The star is overwhelmingly taken as a message of hope and a bright future. When she appears in a spread, she can herald a newfound sense of purpose in our lives. The card's position in the Fool's Journey can be viewed as the calm following the storm of the Devil and the Tower. Rachel Pollack says very often the star and the tower suggest each other, even when only one actually appears. When the walls of illusion come crashing down and we're left with our true selves exposed, the star can be seen as the shining light that descends to fill our hearts with love and inspiration. When the star appears upside down, it can be taken as a sign of resisting the card's message of hope and optimism. Arrogance has also been mentioned as an aspect of the inverted star. According to Rachel Pollack, reversed, we close ourselves off from the card's calm and hope, experiencing weakness, impotence, and fear. This deep insecurity can sometimes mask itself as arrogance.
Korrespondence Korner!
The star sits on the 28th path of the Tree of Life between Netzach and Yesod. This is the path between victory and foundation. She corresponds to the Hebrew letter Sadi, which means fish hook. Her musical note is A sharp.
Take me to the rolling sea.
Her corresponding herb is skullcap, and her zodiac sign is Aquarius. The big takeaway from the star is the concepts of hope, calm, optimism, and feeling like you're getting back on track after a bad time. Paul Foster Case says the light is dim, like starlight, but these stars are distant suns. Thus it is written, when you have found the beginning of the way, the star of your soul will show its light.
Thank you for popping in to Kippy's Quest. May the coming days bring you radiance, aspiration, and we're optimistic that you'll like this video and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.